Diary of a Nihilist, Chapter 3. This chapter will be devoted to the problem of pornography addiction, the problem of watching pornography in general. I'm a bit of a pornography addict myself, and that is why I think it's important that we talk about this, especially since it's been a year since my last two videos were made. In those videos, both touched on the topics of substances that I've already given up or made into something of moderate consumption. So I do not smoke weed, and I really don't drink alcohol unless it's like a family gathering or something, and even then I only do it maybe for New Year's or something. So those two really became a non-problem in the last year, 2 years or so. But pornography is very different. Pornography is a horrible addiction to have. I would probably say that being addicted to certain drugs like heroin and so on can actually be comparable, because in a way it is also, with pornography, it's also something that your brain is telling you to obsess about, something that you a way for you to seek pleasure through the release of hormones like dopamine. And it really is, it's hell on earth. It's hell on earth. It's I didn't script this video. I just kind of decided to talk out of my heart, so to speak. And what I can safely say is that after I've beaten my addiction to nicotine and to alcohol and to obviously smoking weed and to a bunch of other things, like for instance overeating, being incredibly lazy, stuff like that. These are all things that you can beat easily by just having some willpower and just by giving up some things. But with pornography it's not that simple, because at least with me, when I'm thinking about porn, watching porn, it's not like I can just convince myself not to do it. It wasn't like when I quit smoking, because when I was on a path to quit smoking, there were days where my brains would tell me, go on, go buy a pack of cigarettes, get a smoke, light up one of them. And I would immediately engage the other part of my brain, which would tell me to not do it because it's not worth it, because I'm on a good path, because I'm progressing, and because it kills you, and so on and so on. So it was a non-issue. The same with alcohol. One bad experience was enough for me to quit. With pornography, however, this just does not work. It does not work. I can tell myself in my brain for 1,000 times to not watch porn, to not engage in pornography, to not try to masturbate, and so on, and it just won't happen. It will simply be stuck in my brain not to do it while I'm simultaneously watching porn. And I think this is mainly because of our reproductive traits, the reproductive traits of our biology, our reproductive tendencies. But even then, it's so horrifying to think of yourself as a human being in the broader positivist definition of the word, in the more like an enlightenment Rousseau-esque kind of way, and at the same time realize how animalistic one can be when engaged in the pornography. I myself, as a Catholic especially, it makes things even worse, even though masturbation in general, if it's not a self-conscious act, which is usually not with me because I'm obsessive about it, it's considered a venial sin. But whenever I would do it, I would feel like I've done the worst thing I've ever done. I would feel like this is the worst mortal sin that I've just committed. I would try praying rosary, and it usually helps. It usually puts the mind at ease. But at the same time, it only helps until the next time you commit this act, the next time you commit this sin. So in a way, it's pretty hopeless. I am also, one thing that probably really troubled me was that there are, of course, secular methods in how to beat the pornography addiction, And of course, one that is being talked about the most, which I agree with in principle, is the NoFap, which is obviously a movement of mostly males who've decided to quit masturbating and to quit watching pornography, with the emphasis on watching pornography. But masturbation is really important here too. It's no excuse. So, what I would also kind of want to say here is that, in a way, NoFap helped me. Like I did have one or two really good streaks of, we're talking 20 plus days. In one case, we're talking 100 plus days. But at the same time, because of all the talks about, when you're on NoFap, you talk to people on their subreddit, they will talk about magical powers that you get, like you're not so tired anymore, you're more relaxed around people, especially girls, for instance. And that thing kind of sticks in your brain to the point where that when you so-called relapse, aka masturbate, you instantly feel helpless, weak, which you wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't feel like that before I knew about NoFap, but now I do, and I think it's a placebo, and it really impacts me negatively because I'm I don't feel like I'm making progress after a relapse. I'm feeling like I've done the worst thing in the world. I just feel so alone and even depressed to a certain extent, and I think that's like a direct consequence of NoFap, not really connected to things like, I don't know, like the what they would claim to be like biological effects on you as you masturbate. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's just more the placebo. Although I do feel pretty tired every time I do it. So I'm recording this video because it's been 22 years, 22. Oh, I wish. It's been 22 days since the start of my last streak, which unfortunately ended today. And let me explain why it ended. And I'm just warning everyone that this is graphic content. Yesterday, I've been looking at the news about New Year's celebration, and one of the news also included people jumping into the icy sea water, in the icy sea, in the winter sea, in order to celebrate the start of a new year. It's like a tradition. And amongst those, in the news, amongst the pictures in the gallery, there was also a picture of a very lovely, ample young girl in a bikini jumping into the water with her back towards the camera. And that thing triggered in my brain this lust, and this lust would continue from yesterday evening to today afternoon when I inevitably relapsed. This is something that happens to me regularly. I can really avoid masturbation until I'm on the internet and I see a trigger. And this sort of a trigger can be literally anything as long as it includes a woman, as long as it includes like a girl photo. So I would effectively I would have to shut down all my social media and stop reading the news in order to not have these sort of triggers in front of me. The most I've managed to do is kind of delete all the explicit pages from my likes. I make sure that people I follow don't post not safe for work kind of content on Twitter. But that's pretty much the only method that I can use. I feel like I still need a lot of social networks, especially Facebook, because I use it mainly to talk to people. Though I think if I would just use Messenger, it would be also pretty good. So I don't know. All I know is that these triggers are really bad, and it's just like with alcoholics, because when an alcoholic who was sober for 20 years gets just a tiny drink of whiskey, that person will go insane and will go back to drinking alcohol. And it's the same with pornography. It never leaves your brain. The pornography you watched, it's always there. It's hidden in your memory, and it's hard to wash away, and you will always remember it. And it's such filth, and it's so horrible, and it really depresses me and makes me so angry that I've managed to get addicted to this horrible thing. And it just gets stuck in your brain and you cannot help it. And the only way to not relapse is to not think about pornography, which is extremely difficult. When I say don't think about pornography, I mean don't think about sex in general, and that's incredibly difficult. As you may know, males think about sex at least 7 times a day, and covering that up is really difficult. Sometimes I manage, but that's like 1 or 2 days max. And even if I do, sometimes I will feel weak about it. And then other times I will not be necessarily lusting after anyone. I will just feel like I'm on such a good streak now that I could finally try to get a girl. But that's also a mistake, because eventually I find out that my wish to find a girlfriend is more connected to having sex with her than to actually having a solid, stable relationship that can grow into something bigger and perhaps one day produce children. And it's because of this sort of thinking, especially with me, because I'm an awkward person. I've never really had a serious girlfriend in my life, only a couple of like flings and stuff like that, because most of my encounters with women were sexual, of sexual nature, not necessarily of loving or romantic nature. Because of that, I have a big problem in this department, because on one hand I see women as objectives. Whenever I'm watching porn, whenever I'm on a masturbation streak, I will think of them as objects a lot of the time. And when I'm not, I'm still either thinking, lusting after them as objects, or maybe 10 or 20, 30 days into the no fap streak, that thing will stop, but eventually there will be something that will trigger my thinking again. And that is essentially what really makes me very angry inside, what makes me worried about my future. In a way, I'm also thinking that until I fix this, until I get rid of this addiction that's crippling my life, I will not be able to be a family man. I will not be able to have to be a father, to be a good influence for potential children that I could have. I feel like I'm worthless in that regard. And even though I've made so much progress and I've actually really stepped into the manhood in the last 2 years or so, this thing that makes me feel so guilty and so perverted and so disgusting and so sick is really ruining me. It really is. I don't even know what I would do if I would be more exposed. I don't think I have a lot of shame in general, but I feel really ashamed about this one. And I don't know what to do except continue the nofap streaks over and over and over again. I may eventually try counseling or something, but I think that maybe one day I'll be able to really use my nofap for good. I My longest streak on nofap was such an amazing period in my life. I've achieved so many things. People really liked me and enjoyed hanging out with me, and this is something that I thoroughly miss and I always want to get back, but it's impossible, because eventually I will forget about how amazing it was, just so that I can have a couple of seconds of so-called pleasure. And it really hurts, because again, you would think that cigarettes or alcohol or something would be tough to quit, but they have nothing on pornography. This is a really scary addiction, and if you have children, keep them away from it. Keep them away from pornographic material, and please join the fight. There is a good website called Fight the New Drug, and in there's a lot of content about the harms of pornography, and I really think this is the new heroin. This is the new thing that we should try to eliminate in our society, because it became really dangerous. And maybe it wasn't as dangerous when it wasn't as widespread in the age of the VHS and so on. It probably wasn't as dangerous as it is today, because today it is free and available on the internet to everyone, including children, and there are so many varieties that there is no perversion that a man cannot indulge while watching porn. Everything is permitted, and it is really scary, not just from a Catholic point of view. I'm pretty sure that there are many secular people who believe the same thing, who've experienced the same symptoms that I've experienced, the symptoms of being a loser, a weakling, someone who is not able to live a real life or to commit or to have a real loving relationship, but would instead abuse pornography in order to get the most basic instinctual animalistic needs of his be fulfilled. And yeah, that's basically what I have to say about pornography so far. It's horrible, it's a dangerous addiction. I'm really struggling. I urge people to pray for me if possible. um, and I hope I beat this thing. I really do. I really do. I have a support. I have some support systems. I have friends that I can rely on, either people who don't know about it or people who do. But it would be much easier if societies would come to a consensus about how dangerous it is, which of course will not happen because pornography does create weak, passive, feeble men, and those are the sort of men that society nowadays needs in order to continue destroying the fundamental traditions and basis of civilization. Alright, enough chatting. Thank you for watching this, thank you for listening. And remember, pornography is a horrible addiction to have. I wish you a nice year 2019, free of all pornography, and I'll catch you later.